Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for June 2nd, 2020. Please note, I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storm I'm talking about. And for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. So today I'm looking at Tropical Storm Cristobal, which has been generally disorganized but seems to be attempting to organize as we speak. There is this area that was previously a mesovortice rotating around this general area of rotation, but it seems that now this area is trying to become dominant as it has the most convection in the area, and also is deepening quite a bit now. Recon is just getting in there now, and it's finding pressures as low as 997.3 millibars. So this is quite a bit deeper than last found it earlier this morning, which was 7 millibars higher approximately. So this storm has strengthened, and this area likely has some implications for track as it is a lot closer to the coast now and could make landfall as early as tomorrow on the Yucatan Peninsula in the region of Campeche. So still, the steering is pretty uncertain right now. It is embedded in Central American gyre right now, which is that's over Guatemala, and right now it's trying to impart some southerly flow over Cristobal right now, and this. But however, there's also some other features right now, such as this area of convection over the Yucatan, which kind of similar to yesterday, actually pushed. What it did yesterday actually was make it a lot slower to move to the west due to the surface convergence here, and that may also be occurring here, which is trying to pull it to the northeast, which is offsetting that flow to the south from the Central American gyre, and as a result, you're getting some general easterly flow, easterly movement, but with a bit bias a bit towards the south, and at this rate, it looks like it's likely to make landfall now, but it's not going to hit the mountains like it was expected, like it was possible to the other day. So it is likely we are going to see one system here instead of the two that were previously possible. One thing, in my opinion, that's really great to do is look at the water vapor imagery around a storm, because it gives you a really good picture of what kind of features are existing around the storm. So see here over southern Texas near the border with Mexico, there is a bit of an upper ridge here, and to the east of that you have some upper troughing in the Gulf of Mexico, and that as a result is fueling some upper divergence, generally the eastern area of the Gulf of Mexico. It's just broad convection and outflow, and again, this is kind of trying to pull Cristobal to the northeast, but at the same time, again, the Central American gyre is trying to pull it to the south. So these are the two main features right now steering the storm, and there is an explanation to why we have these two more usually minor features that are steering it, and that is because you're seeing this this ridge here that you usually see with the normal subtropical ridge, basically, is imparting some southern flow to the south, which is trying to move Cristobal to the north. But at the same time, there's a ridge over Mexico that is imparting some flow to the south. And so you get these two conflicting ridges, and there's not much in the middle of that. There isn't really much flow. So in a normal situation, you'd have Cristobal stall in that region, but instead there are two features that are enough to steer it, and as a result, you are getting some east-southeasterly movement right now. At the same time, too, the small changes in the track have a lot of bigger impacts than usual with the future of the storm, because if the track's a bit more inland, it might have a harder time reorganizing upon getting into the Gulf of Mexico, and that would mean a weaker storm for the Gulf Coast. But at the same time, if it manages to stay offshore, which looks less likely with the center reformation to the southeast, that means that the storm would be stronger into the coast. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and it doesn't help that a lot of this depends on stuff like upper divergence with a lot of mesoscale features that the global models just do not do well with, and none of them really do. And here's this upper trough that I was talking about earlier. This will be important for Cristobal even in the next 5 days, because it is not expected to really move. Here's the GFS forecast for early Friday morning, and you can see it is still there. It's actually retrograded a tiny bit, and it's a bit more positively tilted. And also dug a bit. It's also dug a bit further. So when you have Cristobal down here, it might be able to feel a bit more of that upper divergence and convection, pulling it a bit more to the north. And since it's likely to be weaker here after moving inland, this might have a bit more of pull on Cristobal. And at the same time, the GFS model says that the subtropical ridge noses a bit to the east, while there isn't as much of that flow from the ridge over Texas, especially as Cristobal has moved east a bit. And that means this mid-level ridge will also steer Cristobal a bit to the north. And this general there's general agreement, especially with upper trough, with the Euro model. So it does look like we'll start to see Cristobal move north on Friday or Saturday, as this flow, or as these two features combine to push Cristobal slowly at first to the north. Ultimately, what Cristobal does in the Gulf of Mexico also depends a lot on small changes in the track. So you can see how the errors are piling up here, and that is why certain uncertainty is so high here. But as we see this upper trough likely retrograde, the upper divergence will try to move Cristobal to the east if it's or to the west if it is at the longitude of the Yucatan Peninsula. But if it is a bit to the west, as the National Hurricane Center track has it, it might not be able to, because it will already be pretty much in line with this. But this interaction with the upper trough means that Cristobal probably won't really look all that nice, because this upper convergence will cause some subsidence, which means drier air in this region. And if there is a low pressure system, say here, it's going to get some of this subsidence and bring it into the core and make it a lot more east weighted, especially with the shear that is hitting it, because after all, this is an upper trough which tends to shear systems as they head north. And so you're likely to see an east-weighted system as some of the shear and dry air try to team up. But if the storm is stronger, it might have a bit more of an inner core that it can use to stay a bit more organized. But as it reaches the Gulf Coast, cooler waters and some stronger shear might be able to start to weaken it as it makes landfall. So luckily, it doesn't look like Cristobal will be much stronger than minimal hurricane, if that. But there are some impacts that will be coming and are happening even for this storm. Here's the official track from the National Hurricane Center. You can see that, yeah, it does dip inland now. It didn't have that yesterday, and that's because there's been a trend in the modeling to dip it briefly inland. And this actually might even be too far west in the near term now, because the center's tried to reform a bit more to the east. So that might mean it has a bit more land interaction with the Yucatan Peninsula. And while that isn't too bad for Cristobal, because this area is flat, it might start to make the little center lose some definition, but we'll have to see what happens with this track. But you can see that it stays relatively in the same spot for a few days before it starts to head north into the actual Gulf of Mexico by Friday afternoon and into the weekend. So as you can see, there's still going to be convection even if it does go inland, and is moving very slowly. So that means you're going to get a lot of rain, especially in this area. So aside from tropical storm force winds, it seems that flooding will be the main impact for this entire area, or for this area of Mexico. So usually you have Central American gyres like this produce a lot of rain, as there is convection that just sit, and the gyre basically sits in the same spot, and this will probably add to it, causing some possibly even feet of rain. So it's likely that there will be a lot of flooding for this region. And for the Gulf Coast, impacts are a bit less certain because we don't really know how strong Cristobal will be as it reaches the coast and where it will reach the coast. But it does look like possibly surge will be an impact, especially if it is broad, and especially also on the east side, depending. So that depends where it tracks. But on the east side of the system, it's likely that there will be some water carried with it and some modest surge. And also, as usual, rain may be an impact, especially if it's east-weighted, so you might have some flooding as the storm heads into the coast. Luckily, though, wind doesn't look to be a major impact here because it is, again, not a super strong system. There's possibility that if it does track in a way that's favorable to the storm, it might be able to be a minimal hurricane on landfall, but it doesn't look like it will be a major wind threat, rather rain and possibly modest surge threat. Otherwise, there isn't too much other than the tropical storm right now in the Indian Ocean. If you have any questions or comments in my video, please let me know, and thank you for watching.